Hey everybody, let me tell you about Audible.com. You can sign up at audibletrial.com/brickpit. We'll give you a free credit, 2 credits if you're already a member of Prime. The Audible catalog's got podcasts, audiobooks, guided wellness, Audible originals. Listen to all you want. There'll be a friendly email reminder to let you know when the trial is expiring.
Chappie, where are you?
Just put in that tape. There's an order. Nothing you can do about me.
Chappie, I want to help you. Where are you?
Doug, I ain't gonna make it.
Chappie!
This wasn't supposed to happen.
Oh my God. From him.
I don't want to sell anything, buy anything, or process anything as a career. I don't want to sell anything bought or processed, or buy anything sold or processed, or process anything sold, bought.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Brick Pit. This is the podcast that you didn't know you didn't need. We have serious talk about unserious things. I'm Adam, and co-hosting with me today is a man who I think all of us would actually describe as wonderfully kind and generous and gracious, warm-hearted. One of the most considerate and easygoing people I've ever met. Just outstanding person. We're really lucky to have him around. Welcome, Jason. Glad to have you on the cast.
Screw you.
And,
hey, hi. How's it
and
going?
Also joining us is Josh. Josh, would you like to say hi?
Is that the big joke?
That's not a joke. Well, you're a big joke, but no.
I feel we got another MST3K open session coming here.
You know it's illegal to drop bombs like that on American soil.
This episode is
brought to you by the military-industrial complex.
and Josh. So welcome to the podcast. This is going to be an interesting episode. I'm actually really excited about it because we have a lot of deep cut movies, I think, that are going to fit the idea that we're talking about today. So the idea for this week's cast is we're talking about 80s teen movies, which is a pretty general topic, but I think once you hear what we've come up with, I think you'll get the gist of it. The impetus for this originally kind of stemmed from the idea of talking about the influence of Brat Pack movies. The Brat Pack was hugely influential, both mirroring 80s culture, but also kind of defining 80s culture at the time. I think a lot of
I would say they were more defining than reflective.
Reflecting. Yeah, that's fair. In my mind's eye, we've talked about this a lot. It's not what the 80s actually was like. If that makes, for most suburban middle-class kids living out in Podunk, wherever, the themes of the movies are there. Like the emotions are real, the feelings are real, that teen angst and all the heartache and stuff. And we'll talk about a lot of different things that come up.
Well, I also think it depends on the film. Rewatching some of these films, I was like, yeah, that's how people dressed.
Well, yeah,
but it's much more muted than like Stranger Things, where like it's just like every era of the 80s squeezed in. It's kind of like the problem with what Jason said about Captain Marvel, about it took place in the 90s. Like one specific year, it was just the 90s.
That's actually a really good, and I'm really glad actually that you brought up Stranger Things, because I think it's important to acknowledge that right out the gate. Even though we're not talking about, my idea for this was that we would specifically talk about movies from the 80s, more or less about the 80s.
We're going to be talking about a lot of the movies that inspired
Stranger Things. Yeah. And I think and Josh, you made a good point. Like in rewatching a lot of these films that I haven't seen in years and years and years, you immediately see the Stranger Thing, like the things that Stranger Things stole from these individual films.
Homaged.
If
that's a verb, to homage. Homaging.
Homaging? That doesn't sound quite right. John Hughes, a lot of the 80s Brat Pack stems from his mind and the way he sort of saw the world, specifically in, Chicago suburbs.
No, I wouldn't say the Brat Pack. I mean, he used Molly Ringwald a lot and a lot of those actors. The Brat Pack also extended out to other people like Rob Lowe and stuff like that. Because there were all these teenagers, or not teenagers, but actors in their 20s who were getting famous playing teenagers.
Yeah, and actually, which is
a trend across all these films. It's funny that
yeah.
you mentioned Chicago, though. That in Ebert's review of Adventures in Babysitting. He said, I don't know when the teen experience shifted to Chicago, but all these films take place in Chicago. He's like, when I was a kid, it was like everyone was going to the California beach. Now they all live in the suburbs of Chicago. That
was definitely John Hughes.
Oh, and Chris Columbus too did
Chris Columbus, who did Adventures in Babysitting. They're almost like go hand in hand. Like I think Chris Columbus focused more on like the kind of preteen teeny bopper side of things.
Yeah.
And then like there's a handoff to John Hughes
when they get to the age where they start cussing out the parents.
So like 10, 11.
10 or 11. So, it might be helpful. We're kind of both, or all of us are kind of assuming that people know what Brat Pack means or whatever. So it's a take on the phrase Rat Pack, which was the 50s and 60s, Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin and that
Frank
group.
Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra, who did a bunch of movies.
Cannot talk about Rat Pack and not mention.
I was getting there.
The chairman of the board.
So the Brat Pack is, like Jason already said, it's about a core group of movies, but it's more about a group of actors who are all around the same age, who were in all kinds of different movies. Some of them were John Hughes movies, some of them weren't. But I think the core group of movies are things that we're going to talk about today and you'll immediately recognize, like The Breakfast Club or St. Elmo's Fire, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles. Those are, everybody agrees. But the actors were, I'm not going to name them all, but, the core ones were like Emilio Estevez and Anthony Michael Hall. Molly Ringwald, she's probably the one that's most, if she's in it, you're probably watching a Brat Pack movie in the 80s, I would say.
Ali Sheedy,
yeah, her as well. And then to a lesser extent, I think Rob Lowe, but he's considered.
I wouldn't say to a lesser extent. I'd say he was first and foremost.
Another, I don't know if he's considered part of the Brat Pack or not, but John Cusack, he's in a lot of these movies in this same era.
I don't know. He wasn't considered part of the Brat Pack.
He wasn't. Okay.
Did you do any research for this?
I did the same amount. I always do.
So none.
I guess if this is your first time listening, as always, everything we say is probably true or maybe not.
I would take everything we say with the same seriousness that you should take anything anyone on the internet says at any given point in time.
Yeah,
that's 100%. Yeah,
I don't think John Cusack's considered one of the poor, but he's definitely one of those like orbiting around it.
Yeah.
People.
He was
like
kickboxing around it.
That's a good reference.
Man, look, kickboxing. Put it.
We'll start there in just a minute. Actually, that's a good. That's a good segue.
But other people like Robert Downey Jr.
Oh yeah,
Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah.
Sean Penn, James Spader, also kind of.
Yeah, James Spader. Not, we can't forget him.
Yeah, they're not core members of the group, but they're definitely considered by a lot of people to be a part of that whole.
Yeah,
because they all pretty much hung out together too a lot as well, partying.
Yeah, and they were tabloid sensations and stuff.
Yeah, and of course Emilio's younger brother Charlie Sheen.
Yeah,
Little Chucky, we used to call him.
When you were there, right? That's back in the.
Carlos Estevez, man.
Emilio Estevez, man, has had some stones to, he was like, I'm not changing my name. He didn't want to be, he wanted success on his own, but also he was proud of his birth name. So that's.
I know that. I mean, he's done very well for himself.
Yeah. But who would have thought back in those days that Emilio would be like the best of the Estevez? like nobody was taking that bet.
I know. I think we're all banking on Joe. Google that, people. Figure that out.
My heart hurts for poor Joe.
Like he's the guy you look at. It's like he looks familiar. He's got to be somebody. No,
he has
he's
a
not.
passing resemblance. Oh, he's like a Baldwin brother. Like way down below Steven or
every time we talk about the Baldwins, every time we do this, one of our earlier episodes where you said there's the greater and lesser Baldwins, and that's always that's my favorite Josh.
Josh actually has an appendix. It's a lot like Tolkien's, and it's the separation of the greater and the lesser Baldwins.
It's just as incomprehensible as the Silmarillion. Like he's talking about the Baldwins in one chapter, in the next chapter he's talking about his hatred of Stranger Things. It didn't make any sense.
And then there's just this 300-page monologue about diabetes, and nobody knows where that's coming from. That's the whole thing.
That's coming from my pancreas. See, I didn't say it came from my heart.
Which everybody knows your pancreas is dead, man. Come on.
Just like
its heart. To get the ball rolling, I actually like Josh's play on this. I wanted to start with Say Anything. It came out in 89. It stars a lesser Baldwin. It actually doesn't. It's actually, of all the teen romance 80s comedy movies that come out of that era, it's probably my favorite. It's different from us even today. I think a coming of age teen comedy, it has more weight. The characters are actually sort of more developed.
It straddles the line of comedy and drama. It also, I think, borrows heavily from The Graduate.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
The whole I don't want to buy things that are sold or sell thing is pretty much a direct riff off of the Plastics speech from. I mean, I'm not saying it's a rip off, but I think it was heavily influenced by The Graduate. And even like they're leaving on the airplane at the end is reminiscent of the end of The Graduate, because it's like on first reflection you think it's like, oh, but if you put it in like real context, you're like, oh, she just kind of took off with this dude to England. That's probably going to fall apart. Adam,
maybe, yeah.
I hate to burst your bubble. It's going to fall apart.
But it's somewhat. I don't disagree with that. I think everybody knows. Like maybe not the teenagers who are watching it for the first time who have those feelings, right? So just real quick. So it's not a John Hughes movie, but it's actually Cameron Crowe.
Cameron Crowe.
His directorial debut.
Yeah.
But he's also responsible for Fast Time at Ridgemont High, which could, of course, be included on any of our lists, and I don't think it was, but because it was a very obvious choice.
Yeah, I do want to interject something real quick about something that looking back at these films as an old man from my rocker. I think the real genius of a lot of these films, the good ones, the ones that stand the test of time, is that they work from both sides of the coin. Because, and I'll talk later about, my thoughts on some of these films when I was watching them when I was contemporary or younger than the characters, and then now watching them as like a parent of a child that's like entering.
So glad you brought that up. Yep.
And Chris Columbus does a fantastic job with that, because even in the first I think he did the first two Harry Potter films, and it's such a delicate balance that it can be viewed two ways simultaneously depending on your point of view. That's masterful. And I think the ones like the Breakfast Club and all the ones that we're talking about, maybe not some of them, but but the ones that are
the ones that are good,
exemplary of the genre, I think are able to resonate with you no matter what age you are. So, and I think that's something that's lost a lot today, because everything's so narrow, targeted focus. Like we need the preteens on this, and it's like we don't give a crap if anybody else cares about this. So I hate everything. I've aged out of the marketing.
so for Say Anything, one of the things that I think I like about this movie touches on what you're talking about. I guess real quick, for anybody who's not seen it, the premise is that the valedictorian, straight A, perfect student daughter, it's the movie essentially takes place over the summer after graduation. She's super buckled down, super straight-laced, has won a scholarship to go to England. And on the graduation day of graduation, John Cusack gets up the nerve to call her, and her dad is played by John Mahoney, who you'd recognize as the dad from Frasier.
That's why you picked this.
And it's not the only reason. This, to me, the theme of this movie is about trust. One of the things that on rewatch of this, so I mean, just like you, so I haven't seen this movie since before I had kids, and then on rewatch, getting ready for the show, it's a totally different movie. Like all of these are different. They get different, especially these coming of age where there's parents involved. He's not a Disney dad, right? He's not some idiot, bumbling, clueless, can't figure out what the heck's going on at any given moment. He's serious. Now he has a big secret that he's kept, but he's a caring, trusting parent. And the line, the name of the movie, Say Anything, is because she says, "I feel like I can say anything to you." So like she spends the night with John Cusack, and then she tells her dad about it. And he reacts like a dad, but he's also like, he calms himself down to listen and see what's going on. The core of the movie is about honesty and dishonesty. And it's really, really just the way the dynamic between the father and daughter play out. it's well rounded. And the secret he's keeping is that the dad he has committed a white collar crime. He's a nursing home director, and essentially he uses that to profit from when the residents die. He steals their money more or less, and so the IRS prosecutes him. That sets up what's another interesting fact that doesn't happen in a lot of teen comedies then or now. The consequences of like things that are going on with the secondary character have weight. Mm-hmm. And it contributes to their like realism of the story too.
And I think one of the prevailing tropes or themes in these kind of movies is the issue of stakes. Mm-hmm. I love that the stakes are always, as an adult, they're kind of small. Yeah. But their thing, it's like Goonies. You know, like we talked about Goonies, like the crux of Goonies is they don't want to move. And as an adult, you're like, I get it. Yeah. You know, but when you're a kid, that's like devastating. And so like,
literally world changing.
Yeah, and Adventures in Babysitting, the premise is they're going to drive 30 minutes into downtown Chicago to pick up their friend and come back because she ran away and got as far as the bus stop. One of the most hilarious things in the film that is she's calling on the payphone and says, Can you pay for a cab if I bring a cab back? And she's like, no, that'd be like $40. And she said, well, I used all my money on a cab to get down here. So this girl took a cab from the suburbs to the bus station and used all of her money. That just cracked me up because it's like, that's exactly what a teenager would do that was running away and then immediately regretted her decision. But that's small stakes, but that's like to a kid, that's real deal. They're trying to run away and then you gotta save them and keep them from the parents from seeing them. And
so let's talk about that movie.
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
I've always seen the one scene. I watched it in the trailer. It was actually so this is a Chris Columbus movie, as you've already mentioned. It's actually his directorial debut.
What's funny is most of the movies that I chose, Roger Ebert hated.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this is one where he mentioned like, oh, everything's in Chicago now. But like he was like, basically like this movie was not very funny except for the scene that I personally thought was like incredibly cringy and not funny. He loved. And that's when they end up in the blues club and have to sing the Babysitter Blues. It's
awful.
It's bad. It's bad. And I'm going to say it didn't age well because it was
bad then.
It was bad then. It played really, really badly.
So on that note about aging well, not just this movie, but I think it's important to make a note here. A lot of the movies we're going to talk about today have at least one scene in them that is uncomfortable to watch. either because of the length, like the times were different. They're a period piece of their own time.
Well, and I think ultimately that's probably a positive that it shows that, you know, we're moving
of evolution of society. Yeah. So I always say that to say we're not necessarily endorsing these films whole cloth. If you watch them and you're like, I can't believe these guys would.
So Adventures in Babysitting, Chris Columbus, Elizabeth Shue, who like was like my first celebrity crush, still is to this day. She's amazing, can do no wrong.
Boy, do I have a surprise for you, Josh. Elizabeth, are you on the line?
So anyway, what I liked about this film, this was definitely it was small stakes. Anthony Rapp was the annoying friend. I didn't realize that. Who later he's now like Stamets in Star Trek Discovery.
Big Broadway star too.
Yeah, he was in the original cast of Rent. But he blew up. Good for him. He was the
he literally blew up.
Yes, that was sad, but he was the tropey like annoying friend. There's so many little directing choices that are just delicious. So, like when I was a kid, like you thought Elizabeth Shue had it all together, and she was 17, and she was the babysitter, and so she has all this authority. You watch it as an adult, you're like, none of these kids have it together. This is a disaster from the get go. When they're first going into the city, there's a shot of them driving, and she's driving in her mom's, station wagon, and she's in the far left lane, going about 15 miles an hour, and cars are just zooming by. And it's like a 3-second shot, but it's like that's exactly what some stupid teenager would do. Drive in the left lane at 15 miles an hour, thinking, and I was like, There was just a great attention to detail, and then the tire blows out. She's got to cross through all the traffic to get off.
Going back also, I think, when you were talking about the friend who calls to initiate the entire trek into Chicago, I think one of my favorite bits is the fact that she is so her mind is completely melted down just from having to be in a bus station in Chicago, and just the people who are in a bus station in the middle of Chicago.
Well, to be fair, somebody flashes a handgun at her.
Well, I also want to say here that the little girl, and I can't remember her character's name, but she is the most legitimate comic book enthusiast in all of cinema.
For Thor.
She was 100% into Thor in 1987 or whatever. When nobody read Thor, she loved Thor. Kudos to her.
And I love the fact that at this point, Marvel had zero power.
Right.
It was you can use the Thor character, and it's Vincent D'Onofrio.
Mm-hmm.
In a wig.
In a really
Thor
bad
hammer
wig.
Built, yes.
But yeah, with a red hat and a blue, tank top.
He's like a mechanic or something.
That plays so well. That's so great. And her just exuberance.
I don't know if you know this, but it was the way the script was written was she was going to be a huge. This is true. I'm not making this up. It's not a bit. She was going to be. She's going to be a huge fan of He-Man and She-Woman.
She-Ra.
There we go.
Jesus, dude.
My brain, my mouth knew what I wanted to say. My brain could. In the original script, she was supposed to be a fan of He-Man and She-Ra. But Chris Columbus is like, I don't like those. I like Thor. And so he changed it. he changed it to Thor. Also, another quick thing is that, because we were just talking about her, Molly Ringwald was supposed to play the part that Elizabeth Shue got.
As much as I like Molly Ringwald, I don't think she'd be right for the role.
So
I think
Paramount,
Elizabeth Shue was great.
Molly Ringwald's prices were too high or whatever. Paramount had optioned this script, and they said, but they would only make it if it was Molly Ringwald because of the time and when this was.
The cachet.
She was the one. It didn't work out, and so that's why Disney. And by the way, it's on Disney Plus.
That's what. And look, here's the only thing.
The edit.
Yes. So Disney likes to throw up that, and I thought there was going to be warning, there's smoking in this, because they like to do stuff like that, or and there are things in there that hey, there's some racial insensitivity in this film.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're just we edited for content.
Yeah.
And I was well, I wonder if I'll be able to tell. Oh yeah, it's basically a TV dub over some of the
F-bombs and things.
Yeah.
And poorly done at that, which is...
Yes, it was... I think it was literally taken from when they did it on TV 20 years ago.
Or, it would have been better instead of dubbing over her with... It was her voice and then, fool. It was like a 40-year-old man was... It's wait a minute, that didn't sound right.
You could hear the Marlboro in his...
He took a drag.
Laced his vocal cords.
He's got one hand on the shuffle, going back. All right. Lining up the fool.
I think that's it. One take, we got it.
That's a lunch. Yeah, so but I would have much rather, especially now that they're pulling in the Netflix Marvel stuff and all. Just put the warnings up. That's some people get all bent out of shape of that, but it's a warning can't hurt you. And a lot of times, when I was a kid on HBO, it told you of untold treasures you were about to see.
Right. Sometimes set it up the bar a little too high, and
right. But if it said rated R, and you didn't see partial nudity, I wasn't watching it. Change the channel. Not worth my time. That's just being real, man.
This is an old joke, but there's a joke in Friends where Joey says, somebody comes in, he goes, how'd you like that movie? He goes, I was lied to. It said full nudity. He goes, nobody wants to see man. That's not what we were expecting. I watched that whole movie. This is not what I signed up for. So, Jason, what's a pick up?
Hey, thanks for reminding me why I don't watch Friends.
I know it's. So, what's your first take, Jason?
Okay, I'm actually going to do two movies at once because they are awesome and they are directed by Savage Steve Holland. I realized I have an affinity for directors who just unapologetically love cartoons. Their style is definitely, influenced by that, like Joe Dante. But Savage Steve Holland started off as an animator. claim to fame, he made the whammies on Press Your Luck.
Mm-hmm.
Little animated whammies that come and steal your money when you screwed up.
I had no idea. That's awesome.
Yeah. First film he did is a great cult classic, Better Off Dead, starring John Cusack.
Yeah, any kind of 80s teen movie, this is top of the list stuff here.
Unfortunately, it's not available to rent or stream anywhere right now. I'm sure it'll come back around, but I wasn't able to pull it up. So I've never seen Better Off Dead. I know it's a cult classic. It's definitely on the list for you.
You have to watch it. It's Curtis Armstrong is also in it, which most people will remember as Snot from the Revenge of the Nerds movies.
Booger, I believe.
Excuse me.
Booger.
Sorry.
Snot was in is in the knockoff or in the mockbuster version.
We're in rare form with our references tonight.
So, but yeah, it's very much influenced by his animation background and love of animation. What I think I really love about Joe Dante and Savage Steve Holland is their realization that animation, essentially at its base, is very dark comedy. It's about, dropping anvils and pianos on characters and blowing them up with dynamite. So that dark humor transitions into what he does. And the concept is John Cusack is a teenager. His girlfriend, Beth, breaks up with him. This destroys his world. And he starts seriously contemplating suicide. And hijinks ensue.
That's hilarious!
But it's also, filled with a lot of animation, stop motion, and regular cell-drawn animation and everything. It is very surreal, very over the top. All the characters are essentially cartoon characters. His mother is trying to start cooking more healthily and stuff like that. And so instead of frying bacon, she boils it. His mother also, by the way, is played by the original little girl from the original True Grit.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah, same actress. Also David Ogden Stiers. So, it's about him wanting to kill himself. Crazy things happening. I think at one point he decides he's going to drink some kerosene or something like that. And he gets pulled away as he's walking, he's covered up in oily rags and stuff like that, carrying a jar. And his family stops him and pulls him into the dining room because they have company. They got the neighbors from across the street who have the foreign exchange student and all that kind of stuff. The neighbor's mom winds up drinking the kerosene, and she's a smoker. So she lights the cigarette. There's an explosion. And the next scene is John Cusack, his neighbor, and the foreign exchange student. And he's like, sorry your mom blew up. Of course, he has a fight with his girlfriend's new boyfriend, who's captain of the ski team. And so he winds up challenging that guy to a ski competition, and the foreign exchange student, she teaches him how to better himself at skiing, all that kind of stuff. Because a big thing about Savage Steve Holland is John Cusack's character always kind of overstating his abilities in certain things and then having to prove himself. Big hit on HBO. I know that's where Josh and I both saw it. Everything went very well, and Cusack immediately signed on to do Holland's second movie, One Crazy Summer. And so they go into that production and everything, and then there's the premiere, and Cusack apparently comes out of the movie and just hates the movie.
I didn't know that.
According to Savage Steve Holland, he actually was you made me look like a fool. I'll never trust you again.
Wow, and that's my favorite of the two, actually.
And of course, now Cusack's I think it's good. I thought it could be better, but I say that all my movies. And of course, Cusack, as much as I love him and a lot of these movies at that time and Grosse Pointe Blank, does kind of have a reputation of being a difficult actor. But One Crazy Summer is the follow-up. It's on an island in Nantucket, and it's actually my favorite because it is the most zany and out of control.
Zany is a good word.
Yes. Is it all the same characters in the same universe?
No.
Okay.
It's that same, living cartoon thing. And it's John Cusack, and Curtis Armstrong is in it again. But you have Demi Moore in this next time. And this one, he's called Hoops because apparently he plays basketball. But during the whole film, you see that he can't actually sink a ball into a basket.
and that brings up, there are two of my favorite things in films that I'll never get tired of. Is one is and these show up a lot in these movies, is somebody says something crazy at the beginning of the film, and through like a wacky series of events, that preposterous thing comes to fruition and puts him in that situation. And the other is, and both of these things happen in this film, and the other one is just the Rube Goldberg machinations that put people like into ultimately like an absurdist situation. But like, because you saw the sausage making, like it all has like its natural flow.
Yeah. It doesn't break pit you. You can follow along.
It starts off like, oh, okay. And it keeps topping itself and getting crazier, but like, you're with it every step of the way.
It's boiling the frog alive is what's happening.
Well, I love it. This has a great comedic cast in it. Like I said, it's John Cusack and Curtis Armstrong again. Demi Moore is now in as the love interest. You got Bobcat Goldthwait. You got Joel Murray, Bill Murray's younger brother.
Who's
Joe
fantastic.
Flattery. Yes. Joe Flattery from SCTV, one of the most underrated comedic actors, I think. Mark Metcalf, who was like the professional jerk of late 70s, 80s films, because he was, of course, the ROTC commander in Animal House. He's also famously in the Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It video. And so he does this jerk, the 80s horrible capitalist who's trying to take land to build his great real estate development and restaurant and all that kind of stuff.
I wonder who he was spoofing.
What I love about it, it's one of my favorite setups in comedy. This particular joke, it isn't done nearly as well until almost like 20 years later when Arrested Development decided to do it. But, of course, he's doing his development, so he has the little model of his development. The centerpiece is his restaurant that he wants, and he wants to put it on the land that Demi Moore just got from her granddad. Has back mortgage, so she's trying to get money for it. Bobcat Goldthwait, this is probably the best use of Bobcat Goldthwait ever in a film.
Other than Shakes the Clown, yes.
Yeah. They're on an island. They're on Nantucket Island. There's a lot of Jaws references in this film. One of them being is there's a sequel to a movie being made there. The movie was Foam, and it's about a giant dolphin with rabies that terrorizes this New England town. He has a part-time job like running security for the film company, like guarding the prop truck and everything, the wardrobe truck. But he's also supposed to leave and watch the party at the bad guy's estate because this girl has pulled John Cusack into a date with her at the movie theater, and her boyfriend is that guy's son who's the big dumb jock with a temperamental attitude.
The William Zabka of the film.
Yeah. So Bobcat Goldthwait's screwing around in the prop truck, and he finds a Godzilla costume. So what else is Bobcat Goldthwait going to do but put on the Godzilla costume and zips it up? And then he can't get out of it, and he realizes he has to leave so he can be at this party to be on the lookout. He gets to the party. Somebody throws away a cigar, which, of course, lands in the Godzilla mouth and starts setting it on fire. So Bobcat Goldthwait jumps out of the bushes in a Godzilla costume with smoke just billowing out of the mouth. And, of course, runs and stomps all the way across the model development. There's also a bit, there's Joel Murray's, like, little sister has this dog, and they have, like, the cone over it, like, Band-Aids for no reason, like, all over the dog, and muss up the hair and everything to make it look ugly. And these two little girls are, like, making fun of her and her dog. And I love it's just, like, these tiny little bits that they do. So, like, the crossing guard says, if you keep making faces like that and somebody comes up behind you and slaps you on your back, your face stays that way. So the little girls walk around the corner, there's the dog sitting there by itself, so they start making faces in front of it, and the little girl comes up behind them, slaps them on the back, and they pull their hands away, and it's like this Twilight Zone-esque face on them. What I love about these films, though, is, like I said, unlike Revenge of the Nerds, it ages well. The cringiest thing in this movie is the fact that Jeremy Piven is in it.
Oh,
Who's
that's
Jeremy
low,
Piven?
Man. That's low.
I don't know. I don't remember who Jeremy Piven is off the top.
Jeremy Piven is indistinguishable from the characters he plays. He was you know him from Entourage. He was was the agent. He was also in PCU, which was a movie that was much better than it deserved to be.
You mentioned Bobcat Goldthwait, which I haven't thought about him in a long time. But what I was going to say is I really admire him. He had a bit, which was that voice that he did. And he basically he made all of his early success was on being that character. Even in interviews, like when he went on Tonight Show or whatever, he stayed in character. And then around like 2000-ish, he just gave it up quietly. He's like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just not going to do it. And then he started doing stand up and became more. And he's very funny. He's a good writer. He's a good comedian.
He's a great director too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he stopped doing the voice because the voice hurt his throat. Like,
yeah. Well, and you want to be more than just a Yakov Smirnoff. Like you want to have a repertoire.
I don't ever want to be more than Yakov.
If I could retire in Branson, well, you're just a Branson hater is what you are. You're an elitist.
If I had a theater named after me in Branson, boy, what I would do.
You're one of them Gatlinburg elitists is what you are.
We'll provide a link below to Josh's Kickstarter to start.
I want my theater to be next to the Hatfields and McCoy Theater in Pigeon Forge. That is the height. So this week's episode is sponsored by Go Gatlinburg, where you come visit us at the Hatfield and McCoy Theater. 5 nights of fun crammed into a 30-minute experience.
I think at this point we should just start charging people to not do commercials for them.
The Gatlinburg tourism commission is going to call up and be like, "Look, how much for you? Shut up! Don't mention Gatlinburg ever again." But I like my moonshine from Billy Ray Cyrus's Moonshine Factory. They have several flavors like watermelon,
cherry,
tangerine dream.
And don't forget to check out the Titanic exhibit.
Top it all off at Ripley's Believe It or Not.
With an aquarium. We're really playing to our demographic here, I think.
I think we've just proven to each other that we've both been to Gatlinburg.
I was going to say, there's way too deep of a dive.
That's an intimate knowledge.
Remember, we're at traffic light number 5 on the strip. Why don't we save Josh and go ahead and take a commercial break? And then when we come back, we'll talk about some classics that I like. So, all right, we're back. So I think for me, it's sort of when I had this idea for this episode, immediately the first movie that came to mind was The Breakfast Club. It's sort of, this is maybe an overly general statement, but I think if I were trying to think of one movie that's sort of central to the teen angst zeitgeist of the 80s films, this is probably it for me. I think for a lot of people, it captured that feeling of these movies in time. If you've never seen The Breakfast Club, the premise is all the different a representative from many of the various cliques in high school.
All the tribes came together.
All the tribes had, so there's a representative
to the detention.
Had a Saturday detention class in the library at their high school in Chicago, or in the Chicago suburbs.
Shermer, Illinois.
Shermer, yep.
Again, the stakes are small, but significant to the people. I mean, Saturday detention, biggest deal in the world when you're in high school. Now it's like, whatever.
Well,
I did those detentions standing on my head. I did in-school suspension.
So Breakfast Club, you have the nerd, you have the jock, the princess,
weirdo, the Judd Nelson.
The Judd Nelson.
Everybody had a Judd Nelson.
And it's actually, I rewatched it. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I had mixed feelings about some of it. Overall, I think it stands up okay. It's in that same, it's a John Hughes film, right? It's like the quintessential John Hughes team film.
To be fair, all those kids did deserve to be in detention.
Right.
No one was innocent in that prison.
Right. And there's some heavy stuff in it too. Like the nerd isn't going to pass shop class. The reason he's in Saturday detention is because he brought a flare gun to school and was going to kill himself. And that's how he got this, because he wasn't going to pass. And,
then there's all the stuff about the kid that got bullied and had by Emilio Estevez.
There's these deep moments. I did do a little reading on this. And what I found was interesting is there's the turning point in the movie. So the gist is all these kids are from different places in their lives, but they're all essentially it's like a lot of movies. What the point is to show you that we're all basically just people are people. Like, we're all different. We all have these ways that we're different, but at the end of the day, people are people. We all have our own trauma and crap we're dealing with.
Yeah, well, it's about understanding the other. It's
right.
Which is like probably one of the major themes of all art is to understand the other.
That's a really good point.
Yes, it's an 80s teen movie, but there's a reason why that it resonates, because it gets down to, because you do grow out of high school, but there still are tribes. It's inescapable. But in just like high school, you forget people have their own struggles, and even if they're not, you're not getting cigarette burns on you because you spilled paint. Like, your struggles are still your struggles, and be cool.
So the scene where they have like their come to Jesus meeting where they're all talking and sharing what makes them unique or whatever. Interestingly enough, they essentially ad-libbed a lot of that. The script sort of framed out what they wanted, what direction he wanted them to drive the story. Mm-hmm. And they did a bunch of different takes, but they all were basically just cut loose to say whatever they wanted. And I thought that was interesting. That was I like little things like that, little inside baseball. And another quick thing is John Hughes does a cameo at the end. He's Brian's dad that picks him up in the car.
John Hughes, after he passed, this girl wrote I don't know where I read it, but apparently she wrote him after she saw his first film, and he wrote back, and they remained pen pals until his death. I think it was on maybe The Breakfast Club or something that he had her come out and help with some dialogue and stuff to make sure it was like for real teen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it was a really touching story, because she was just some Midwest girl that was like, oh, I love this film. It really spoke to me. Like, he took the time to get to know her. And I mean, obviously he milked her for information on how kids talk and stuff.
Yeah. What are young ones saying these days?
Yeah. But I think, that's pretty cool. Like you don't hear anybody saying, especially, he passed away quite some time ago.
Nothing bad's come out about him
long
yet.
enough for people to be like, well, one day at the Breakfast Club, he brought puppies in and he shot them. He said, that's a banner Christmas.
He looked, and then he turned to Molly Ringwald and was like, get your lines right.
I named this puppy Molly. Molly couldn't get her lines right.
Hey, Judd Nelson, come here and hold this puppy for a second.
He turns into Martin Sheen and a little girl down the lane, like, putting cigarettes out on gerbils.
I think we're revealing why you only got to direct that one movie, Josh.
They shoot horses, don't they? That was I was like, yeah, man. It's like a 30-minute shoot. It's great.
I would say for my list of movies that we talk about today, if you're only going to watch one, this is the one.
I think that leads into the one that I really want to talk about.
Sure, let's do it.
Which is another high school centric, like it takes place in a high school teenage movie that like was an abysmal failure at the box office, but I think is after just recently rewatching it, it's like it affected me as a kid and it affected me as an adult watching it. But watching it from the perspective of knowing more about film and script writing, stuff like that, I was like, man, this is awesome. It is also one of the only 2 films that Steven Spielberg took his name off of.
Right. Yeah. So, I'm glad you brought that up.
but here's the thing, and I think I wasn't able to find out the reason why. I don't know if he thought. Did he think it was bad?
No, we can get into it. But go ahead and reveal it, and then we'll talk about it.
So the other was Fandango, though, which is not a Spielbergian film, but he did produce it, and that is also Fandango is to graduate in college what a lot of these movies are to high school. If you've not seen Fandango, it nails that kind of crisis moment of crossing into an adulthood and that weird place where it's like, okay, you're done with college, your life's ahead of you, and you're like, I don't know if you experienced that, but there's that existential crisis of what now? There's no pathway laid out for me. There's kind of this wide open there's no more goal markers. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to graduate high school. I'm going to graduate college. So anyway, the film that I want to talk about is 3 O'Clock High, which is, I got a feeling that we're going to have a different opinion on this, but it is 1987, directed by, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Phil Janot, who was younger than the two leads. And it's a comedy, kind of. It's a dark comedy, but I'd say it falls more to the dramatic side of things. There's some kind of heightened reality to it. The director said that he was informed by Raging Bull and After Hours, and it's basically a remake of 12 O'Clock High.
Right.
The Western.
High Noon, yeah.
Yeah, High Noon. And Spielberg, when he watched it, said he wanted the Karate Kid. He said,
right.
He said, you're supposed to bring the Karate Kid. You brought me Scorsese.
That's exactly why he basically, there was two things. So Spielberg was developing a brand for his name. This didn't fit his brand.
Right.
And B, the director who did direct it sold him one idea. And then
that's
made
a very
totally
young director thing to do. Though.
And then made a different movie.
Karate Kid, cool. And then, but here's the thing: it's shot so like the first thing I was like, I was just digging the cinematography. And digging freaking Barry Sonnenfeld. Was the cinematographer.
It's an excellently filmed movie. It's a film in the way that it's made. It's among all the movies we're going to talk about tonight. It is the most that has that true cinematographer's eye to it. I noticed that too. I really like it.
And Ebert gave it 1 star.
Yeah, well,
hated it.
Yeah,
but he brought some like real old man energy to it because he straight up was like, this guy ends up beating up a bully instead of becoming friends with him. What the heck? It was like, it was just like, dude, you were obviously never bullied in school because somebody that was bullied. It is more like a Scorsese film. Yeah,
that whole if you just punch them, they'll go away. They'll stop. No, they hit you harder. That's how that works.
Right, and that's the brilliant thing about the film. It's like they come up with good ideas and they keep trying to get out. And the whole premise is this new kid comes who's a psychopath, and
they do a lot of build up to create his bona fides.
He's done all these terrible things. They're like, don't touch him. And the guy accidentally touches him. He's like, I'm going to.
That's his big thing. That's his big trigger. Is if somebody touches him,
beat the crap out of you at 3 o'clock. And so this kid goes through like more and more like desperate measures to stop. He pays this guy to try to beat up the bully, and then that guy gets the crap kicked out of him.
That's actually one of the best scenes. Let's stop there for a second because he pays the like captain of the football team because the setup for that's actually really good. He's like, hey, remember that time you defended this other kid? And he's like, yeah, well, I did it for $100. And it's probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. Our protagonist and his buddy, who is the editor of the newspaper, who sort of set this whole bad series of events in motion. They're in the library. They're hiding in the stacks at the end of this long row of bookcases. And the quarterback goes in and he talks to the bully, and whose name's Buddy. He's like, Buddy, I hear you're messing with, what's the kid's name in the movie? I forgot now, but
Jerry Mitchell.
Yeah, Jerry Mitchell. You're going to leave him alone. He's poking Buddy's chest. And remember, Buddy's trigger is don't touch Buddy. And so Buddy grabs the quarterback's finger and breaks it and then punches him in the face and knocks him out. But as he falls, he does that classic thing that always happens in libraries and movies, is he dominoes all the bookcases. And there's just this long row of them, clock, 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 clock. And as the last one falls, there's Jerry and his friend standing at the end of the library, just
completely exposed.
It's a good sight gag. It was. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of laugh out loud moments in this movie for me. That was one of them.
But look. One time when I got in a fight with this guy at school in junior high, I think may have been high school, but we were on the basketball team together, and the whole thing was like, we're going to fight after basketball practice, and it mirrored this movie very much. Like, I didn't want to fight. I knew I would get the crap kicked out of me. So watching that film, like I'd watched that film before, but like that tension that's built up, that's that's real deal. Like that. And I think Ebert just was completely wrong on this. I think that it was acknowledgement of like, high school, there are people that abject evil exist in that high school environment.
Yeah.
Just the relentless terror. And I don't think it represented the decline of Westernness. I thought it was a masterpiece of storytelling. I loved every second of it.
I gave it so my actual rating of it was 6 out of 10 to put a number on it. I thought it was a good movie worth watching. I would recommend it to others. It'll be years before I watch it again.
After this podcast, I'm going to beat you up, and then you'll know what it's like to have that terror.
If you don't think I know what it's like to have that terror, you don't know me at all. So the ending unravels. Like they had to wrap it up somehow, right? The tension of the movie was good, and the pratfalls and the like you said, it has that thing that I really like in comedies where there's the misunderstanding and there's the failed attempt to do some other thing, and you
comedy of errors.
Comedy of errors. I couldn't think of that. But thank you.
That's Shakespeare.
But you got to build that up to a satisfactory conclusion. They either should have ended the film right at the end of the fight. Like, I mean, it was, it didn't have much longer after that.
There's this bit in earlier, like he's trying to get himself put into tension so he doesn't have to fight. Yeah. And so he ends up like
kissing the teacher,
and then she's all into it. That scene where she shows up at the very end, was shot after the film was shot because like test audiences wanted to know what happened.
Oh, for Pete's sake!
So that ending was based on stupid audiences, so you can blame them.
Yeah.
Also, so like this film was like it cost like $6 million. It made like $3 million at the box office. It tanked. Like you said, it's a film, and I think it was. I really enjoyed it. I loved every second.
For its era, it was pretty revolutionary. The way it was. The way the cinematography is definitely worth.
It was shot like if Sam Raimi did a teen comedy.
That's a perfect. Yeah, that's a really good example. So.
Or if Barry Sonnenfeld was the.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget just how like legit Barry Sonnenfeld is as a cinematographer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like that dude, Raising Arizona.
He's not a bad director either.
No. But he usually does over the top comedy stuff. Addams Family. Men in Black. Wild Wild West. But I mean, he is a truly beyond competent cinematographer. Like that dude understands how
he has an eye.
Yeah. He understands how to compose the shot. He understands, how the film reacts in certain lights, stuff like that. He is a master of that craft.
Well, it prompted me on Twitter to have a discussion about it's not the Steadicam is part of it, but the kind of like range of motion that is now existent in film has led to a real decline in mise-en-scene and just setting up shots and
taking the craft of it more seriously.
Yeah, but I think that's a lot of people's unconscious problems. Like they'll talk about Marvel movies, stuff like that. It's like there's not a lot of composition going on. There's a lot of things happening, but there's no artistic composition going on. And sometimes you want to just set the camera
on sticks.
And
let
things happen within that frame.
We most recently talked about this with the new Dune movie that came out, where it's a reason it stands out is because they let the movie just be the movie.
It was deliberately anti-Marvel, and
he takes the time to paint with light, like Thomas Kincaid.
No, but there's a lot of because it goes back to like David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia. There's like you're in a wasteland, so show the wasteland. That showed one of the greatest shots in cinema is Omar Sharif riding a camel up, and he's just like this tiny speck on the horizon, and he gets closer and closer to the camera. Yeah, and it shows just how isolating the desert is.
The best part of Multiverse of Madness was when Elizabeth Olsen has taken over the Scarlet Witch has taken over the non-Scarlet Witch in that one universe and is like checking on the kids, and it's very Raimi-esque. Like the there's movement of the camera, but it's deliberately slowed down and has like this horror aspect to it. But I was sitting there watching. I'm like, this is. And obviously Sam Raimi is a great director, but it's like, man, thank you for just taking the time to
bothering to do it.
Yes, right. You could have dialed it in and gotten your paycheck, and everybody would have loved it.
Right.
But that scene in particular was crafted, and people will talk about how much of emotional resonance they had with it. It's like, right, because you gave the actor time to be in the frame, and you had it set up in such a way that was visually interesting and not overstimulating.
Yeah. So I want to talk about a movie on your list that is the opposite of all of these. I've highlighted it for you if you want to set it up. If not, I'll set it up.
Well, you got to set it up. You brought it up.
Well, I'll be happy to. I have a lot of thoughts on this movie, but I think they are best summarized with since you quoted Ebert a lot, I will do the same.
Oh yeah, I looked up Ebert's review on this too. It was awesome.
The movie, Roger Ebert called this movie an aggressively unwatchable movie.
Yes,
that's like my favorite.
That's such a fantastic.
That should be our tagline for this podcast. This is an aggressively unlistenable podcast, but an aggressively unwatchable movie. The name of it is Dream a Little Dream, a movie I had not heard of until Josh.
Oh, really?
Put it on.
Okay,
here.
So here's why I put it on there.
Okay,
because it was between this, License to Drive, or but we're talking about 80s teens films. We grew up in the era, and I wanted to be truthful in that it's like when I was 10, 11 years old, the Coreys were cool. You know, they were, and I have to, and that
not
was
in this movie though.
I liked this movie as a kid. It's an awful movie, but it was also, it was like on the tail end of the old person enters the young person's body.
Yeah, which is a subgenre itself of the movie.
Yeah.
It was Freaky Friday is like the original in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
but there were so many versions of this in the 80s.
Yeah.
My favorite was the Fred Savage one with Judge
Reinhold.
Judge Reinhold. Yeah, that was.
Was there one with like Dudley Moore and Kirk Cameron?
There sure was. That came out nearly the same time, and this came out around that era. So it was like, as a kid, I expected at some point in my life, either as a kid I would get transferred into an old person's body, or vice versa. As it turns out, I did end up in an old person's body. It just
slow motion.
It took 30 years, but here I am, and there's no way back.
Oddly enough, he had the mind of an old man.
Right. So it's funny you mentioned that, Jason, because in the same review, Ebert says this. He says, "Right, you got it. This is another one of those never relenting body and mind swap movies."
And then he's saying the only thing I kept thinking is like, "My God, what is Jason Robards doing?"
Yeah, no kidding.
So it's a bad movie. It's not. It's full of the Corey Feldman stuff where he's like dancing around like Michael Jackson and dressing like him. And
his acting is just god awful in this movie.
It's bad. But
he didn't even want to be in this movie.
I think they actually tried to put Jason Robards' brain in his head in order for the movie to work, and it just didn't take.
The only reason I bring it up is because
the nostalgia factor for you.
No, not even nostalgia. It's like this. That's my confession. That's my
just honesty.
This is me being honest with the audience, and like because we could easily skip over the Coreys and be like, oh no, we were too cool for this. Like, no.
I'm glad you're saying that because I honestly thought you were like. I thought you were like setting me up for that. Like you were going to like this is like my favorite film. This is 10 out of 10 if we can't like this movie. So I'm glad we're on the same page.
But I will admit, I thought the lead female was very attractive. I probably rented this movie more than one time from Blockbuster. I mean, that's why it's on.
That's the life of an 80s kid.
This is to give us legitimacy as old men talking about the 80s.
If we're going to talk about The Breakfast Club, we have to talk about the Coreys. I mean, let's be honest.
License to Drive was the first film that I was dropped off at the movie theater to see. I was 11 years old, and it may have been PG-13. I may have been in there illegally. And it is a garbage movie, but like I wanted to see it, and it, and it's culturally at the time that was
what was going on.
This is the crap that Stranger Things leaves out. Like they want to leave out the embarrassing stuff that people were into. It's all like hip and like my daughter is like the Eddie Munson character. She's like, oh, he's so hot and all this. I'm like, baby, that dude would have been called a dirt leg and nobody would have liked him. Yeah, because he was poor, he was into metal, and he played Dungeons and Dragons. And now everybody thinks he's cool. But when you were there, you were not cool. Yeah, it was a different world.
I will say one more thing about this. Did
you watch it?
I watched the whole freaking thing. That through because here's the thing. Cover to and then
fool.
And then I was like, Josh just pranked me hard. Like I really did think, because if I've never seen it, I don't read anything about it. If you guys put it on the list, I go watch it.
Did you ever think it was going to get better?
No,
instantly you'd been
about 8 minutes into it. I was like, oh, I'm going to have so much to say about this movie.
This was a lesson for you that like sometimes you can walk out of it.
Yeah, well, it was so bad I ended up sitting through it just so I could be like, if Josh loves this, we're going to war. Like I thought this was going to be the best episode we ever did. But what I was going to say about it is Dream of a Dream. Like, okay, all these mind swap movies, the most essential element in any of these movies. This is the key thing that sells it in every one of these. Like Freaky Friday succeeds because the kid actor pulls off being the older person. Like that's the one thing you have to do.
Say that there's some kind of consistency in the swapping.
Nah, that doesn't
the mechanics of the swap.
Like I could forget. Like this isn't even that good to even break pit. Like you're already. I'm so enraged by the end of this movie that like how they get back in each other, because it's all like there's just weird, like you have to like channel your dream to get in it. What? Who cares? I don't like all that's so terrible that's not what made it. Like the story's garbage.
Well, a lot of that had to do with the script rewrites, because the original MacGuffin was the fact that it was going to be tantric sex.
Oh, I didn't know that, but that
would have improved the movie.
But Corey,
you want to check the facts on that one, Adam, before you.
Corey Feldman is supposed to be the 80-year-old. And
I honestly think Jason Robards would have done a better job.
Right, I think
just put a Michael Jackson hat and a glove on Jason Robards. Oh my God, his
acting is just so terrible. Anyway, I'm glad you mentioned it, and now that I've seen it, I have a new, like if you sort my IMDb rating by rating,
you got a new low.
We have a new low. We found it.
I love the fact that you watch this, but you won't watch the stuff that we
want that are good bad movies. You watch the bad movies.
I watched this because I thought you earnestly liked it.
I earnestly like the bad movies I love.
Yeah, but it's a different vibe. Like this movie's not trying to be. This movie's not. Well, this movie wants to be good.
That's rule one
so do
of
the
a
other
bad
ones.
Movie. Being good is it has to be earnest. If you would ever listen to that episode, you would know that.
How could you be a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and not?
Because I like the riffs, I like the jokes.
Okay, so what I'm
listens to the riff track without watching the movie.
Yeah. So I'm getting from you is that you don't have enough imagination yourself to make fun of the movies while you're.
You know what? That's funny to you. You know what it is? That's actually an interesting observation. It's not. It's been beaten out of me because, like, when my wife and I would go watch movie, or even for years and years and years when we were dating, we'd rent some terrible movie that she wanted to watch, and I would immediately be doing crow, and she's like, "Just shut up."
In my marriage, we've reached that stasis where, like, we don't like.
I know.
When you're newly married, it's like you do everything together and this and that. It's like,
I'm going to go watch a movie. She's like, me too. And we're not doing it together.
I know myself enough that, like, I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm watching Gilmore Girls. I'm not even going to go in the room because I know I cannot keep myself from either rolling my eyes or going
sighing loudly.
Right. So, and I know that she enjoys it. And for what, it's like, cool.
He literally does the army crawl across the floor.
Yes, to preserve the stasis of our marriage, I cannot watch this with you. I will.
Does she watch it with your daughter?
Yes.
Is it like a mom and daughter thing?
Well, until my daughter started watching like 8 episodes a day, it became a thing. But I don't.
So here, throw this grenade in there next time.
That show sucks.
If you really want to be like, throw a water balloon full of paint in there as the good, you say, hey, just watch it through the prism that they're actually both really the villains. That's the whole. If you watch that show from start to finish with the belief that the mom and daughter are actually the villains of the show, well, we're going to get a bunch of crap on this.
Who's to say they're not?
They are. I'm 100%. I've watched that entire series cover to cover 3 times easily with my wife, and then later my daughter.
Here's what I hate about Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
So we're here.
Yep.
The dialogue is so stilted because everyone has it's like Firefly. Everybody is quippy. Yeah. Everybody has that same voice, but they speak really fast and they wait for everybody to stop, and then there's a beat and then there's a return. It's like,
and nobody interrupts.
They go, hey, no. I'm going to give you a snarky return. Oh, I'm going to give you a snarky return. Yeah. And I'm going to give you a snarky return. And it's like every scene is just ba 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 ba, and it makes me want to just scream to the heavens. Somebody take a breath.
Have you seen Marvelous Miss Maisel?
No.
Same part. Amy Sherman Palladino, who wrote Gilmore Girls, also wrote Marvelous Miss Maisel. I like it a lot better. It's the same. It has that problem too. Now that you mentioned, I never noticed it.
See, I ruin things.
Well, I mean, no, but that's what we come to you for. You're like,
right, that's why I don't watch it with my wife, because I don't want to ruin it. Because I would say that, and she wouldn't get that out of her head, and she'd quit watching it, and she'd be mad. And I was like, it's not my fault the show sucks. It's my fault I pointed out that it sucks. So yeah, Corey Feldman is terrible. He was great in 2 movies. Yes. So he was great in Lost Boys, but he also had a very limited role. He was great in Goonies. So also a very limited role.
And keeping in the same vein, I want to talk about the last movie on Jason's list next. And Jason, I'll let you set that up.
It's the first in our hearts.
Well, I have some thoughts on this movie too.
Okay, now we may go to war, Jason.
All right, so I wanted to pick, since the topic got broadened just to apparently movies in the 80s that have teens in it, I wanted to get a sampling of different types. And this is the whole the teens go and they take the fight that the parents, the adults won't do and all that. And you have a lot of these, Red Dawn is one of them. This has to be the most fun and the best of them. Iron Eagle.
I unequivocally love Iron Eagle.
Yes. What? Lou Gossett Jr. How can you not?
Chappie!
Lou Gossett Jr. doing his Lou Gossett Jr. It's, for those who haven't seen it.
Last Starfighter fits into this genre.
Yes. The concept of the movie, it's, middle 80s, a bunch of Air Force brats. One of them's dad is shot down while he's doing a tour over into an undisclosed Middle Eastern country. He's supposed to be in international airspace, but they claim it. They shoot him down. They capture him. They're going to put him on trial, give him the death sentence and all that kind of stuff. No one at the State Department's doing anything because they're not wanting to actually negotiate. They're just kind of wanting to, the small countries wanting to flex their muscles. So the kid comes up with the idea to go rescue his own dad. And there's a lot of things that you just kind of have to go, okay, I'm going to believe that. That's total crap. That's not how anything would ever work, ever.
But do I have to?
Yes, it's law.
If you were in the 80s and watched this,
I was not in the 80s.
It's teen Top Gun.
It is teen Top Gun minus all the things that make Top Gun good.
No, it's all the awesome things about Top Gun, except there's a teen involved.
So the main conceit
so you can identify it with it.
Yeah, the main conceit of this is the fact that the kid knows how to fly a fighter jet, and that's brought in the fact he flies the simulators a lot. He gets in and gets free time in that, but his dad has also taken him up in the jets and let him fly there. And this kid, he could fly. He could fly better than anybody else. You want to know why? Because he listens to rock music when he does it.
And he's a teen, just like you watching this movie.
It's got a pretty baller 80s soundtrack.
The soundtrack was great.
You got Queen in there and everything. Yeah, it is throw you back as soon as you start hearing.
This is the TV show. It's playing on the TV all the time in the first season of Cobra Kai. It's like Johnny's favorite movie.
Yeah.
And he gets all of his inspiration from it. They show all the inspirational speeches from Iron. That's so legit.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Because Johnny would, back in the Karate Kid days, would have loved Iron Eagle.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, and like I said, the whole concept is like his group of friends like get together. They're called the Eagles, and they have like jackets and everything, patches on the back.
Okay,
but they all get together because of course, their parents all work in the Air Force, and they're in the different parts that they need in order to get this together. Cousin Oliver's dad works in intelligence, so he gets all the satellite photos and everything.
John Denver.
And don't forget to point out that all these teenagers are able to bamboozle an entire Air Force base's infrastructure with firecrackers and misdirection.
Yes, because no one gets shot when that happens. Well, what it does is it shows also, as a main 80s teen kids movie, is that the parents are never as competent as the children, especially when it comes to like technology. So they use computers a lot to their advantage, and are able to hijack and get 2 jets fully loaded with weapons and armor.
Did you just watch Iron Eagle like this week, Adam?
Yes.
Oh, that's the problem.
That's the problem. Yeah, it's a lot like we had a friend. We were talking about like the Monster Squad, like how great Monster Squad is, and he watched it. He's like, I don't get it. It's like,
fair enough.
Yeah, because you're like 30 something and you just watched it.
It's like me and Buckaroo Banzai. I came in too late. I watched Buckaroo Banzai in my 40s. It's not as cool as Iron Eagle that I saw when I was 11, and I believed all that stuff could happen. I was not jaded to the world yet.
I will say this. So like the other movie, the Dare to Dream. I immediately thought
Dare to Dream.
I began to think, because I watched Dare to Dream and then I watched Iron Eagle right after that.
Dream a little dream.
And I was like, the guys are out to get me. That's what you have colluded to ruin my week.
If you didn't like Iron Eagle, you're un-American.
Well,
that is true. I think it's in the end of the credits. It says that.
It does. Yeah.
If you did not enjoy this movie,
there's an 800 number for you to call to narc on your friends who said they didn't like that movie.
There were some interesting things about it. The U.S. Air Force wouldn't let them film any of their planes because they have a policy that says you can't film any. There's no movie allowed at the time that involves a theft of an aircraft. So we're not going to sanction that kind of. Same reason like Apple won't let you use iPhones if you're the villain. They don't want a branding problem. And so all of the planes in this were actually Israeli, including the bad guys' plane. Almost all the aerial shots were shot in Israel. All of the stunts and stuff were coordinated by a guy who did a lot of the stunts for Top Gun, which came out. Did it come out the same year or right after? I forget. But
I think maybe a year or two later. I do think this predates Top Gun.
In any case, that was interesting to me that they had to use Israeli aircraft. And the Israelis were like 100% on board with it too, which if you go read a little bit about how they got that gig.
Oh, I want to correct myself. No, it actually came out the year after Top.
Oh, okay. So it is a poor man's Top Gun. It's literally, it's almost like a mockbuster. It's seizing
it was certainly capitalizing on that. Yeah.
The dialogue's terrible. The plot's terrible. It makes no sense. But I'm looking through old man eyes. Is that the problem? Is that
yes? If you're
bringing that Roger Ebert energy, man.
If you're an 8 to like 13-year-old kid watching this, it's like, yeah, that's right. I bet if someone let me fly a jet, I could fly a jet like that.
They just won't let me.
Play my Weird Al tapes and I'll fly.
I'll put on my Pac-Man fever tape, man, and follow up with Mr. Roboto. I had the record for Mr. Roboto, so I couldn't fit it in the airplane.
Anyway, well, I'm glad I saw it. And I have an appreciation of the next one I want to talk about. And we can just do this really briefly because I think we've talked about it before, but it's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And the only reason I want to talk about it is simply so that I can rile
Ferris
Josh up.
Was in Cameron's mind the whole time.
That's I know that you really, really hate fan theories on movies. Like you should do a whole hate box on that. And over the last 20 years, popular theory has been that Ferris Bueller's Day Off is Fight Club and that Ferris Bueller is Cameron. They are the same person and he's in his mind.
Did you really want to talk about this?
I really wanted you to tell me why you think that that's a bad fan theory and why you
because it's a fan theory.
Because why would Rooney be looking for Ferris? And he didn't really give a crap about Cameron. Ferris had a sister, so Cameron made up this whole family dynamic.
It's the same as Fight Club.
If anybody is a figment of anyone's imagination, it's Cameron.
It's Cameron.
You don't see anyone in Cameron's family in that whole movie. No one gives a crap that Cameron didn't show up for school.
Yeah, that's infinitely more plausible.
That's a really good take. Actually,
that Ferris made up Cameron as an excuse to excuse his abhorrent behavior.
Like he's the good guy. Yeah.
You Ferris is a jerk, by the way.
So tell me all about why you think Ferris is a jerk. I want to hear all your old man rants about Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I always thought he was a jerk. Skipped school. Talk about peer pressure. He practically bullies Cameron into leaving.
Literally, not practically. Literally.
Yeah. They ruined the dad's car multiple ways.
He's the
I think Charlie Sheen was a better dude than Ferris. Yeah, he's just crap, man. He's a crap dude.
He's a user.
He is.
Do you like the movie overall?
I love it. My favorite.
Just when you think you're going to zig, he zags.
You should know. It's a good film. It's a fun film, but it's not a film that stands up to scrutiny.
No.
And it just is certainly not a film that stands up to these cockamamie theories that are obviously not true and that are just clickbait for some website. It's like there's not a popular theory. No one ever thought that. No one ever thought. And then even if it's true, what does it matter? Because they don't reveal it. You're just making crap up. I hate that stuff so
There we go.
much.
I'm cranking.
What?
Oh, family show, man.
It's like Jason and Rogue One into A New Hope. Like, now it's just like an episode of Cops. And they go,
Let the hate flow through you. This is gold.
We're just a diplomatic vessel.
Imagine Ronnie Dobbs being the captain of the ship.
That's fine, but he wasn't. It was a bad.
Oh no! Yeah, it was a bad transition. Yes, I'm not gonna lie.
It was reductive to the original story.
John Hughes movie, if we haven't mentioned that already, it's another one of his teen Chicago stories of whatever's going on in teens in Chicago, and came out in '86. It's the reason I think it's important to be on this list is it is a culturally significant film, and I mean that both generally speaking, but also literally. It was added to the film registry in 2014 as a culturally significant movie.
Well, sure, yeah, it's
an important '80s teen movie. I like it a lot. I think it's a great popcorn movie. I agree with you 100% that if you stop and Gilmore Girls, right? If you just turn off your brain and just let it go, it's okay.
There are moments. Cameron in the art gallery that's a significant gold. Deep moment, and there's that's pretty cinematic, endearing part. But and it's funny. Everybody loves Matthew Broderick.
Yeah. Man who never ages, got that baby face. But it's worth talking about. I mean, I don't think there's much more that I need to say about it. But
it was a huge hit at the time.
Yeah,
I mean,
unlike both of the last two movies we talked about, which were deservedly box office disasters. So
it was very popular in the movie theaters. Very popular as a rental.
Yeah,
I think there was like a weekend. I knew someone who was renting that movie like every weekend.
I could see that.
Somebody that I knew at school, their family, we watched Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, I can tell you why though. It's because of what Josh talked about, the low stakes.
Oh yeah,
you watch this movie. If you turn off your brain, it's just a fun 90 minutes, right? You just let it go.
Well, once again, it's low stakes as an adult now, but as a kid. Getting caught by the vice principal.
Well, I don't know about...
It's not a small thing.
The attempted insurance fraud of rolling back the odometer, that's a federal offense.
Oh, come on.
But it is.
It is, yeah, but come on.
And, I mean, that was a sweet car that he just totally ruined. So
yeah. And they ruined like 4 of them in the movie, yeah.
Well, I'm talking about in the film. He only ruined one.
It was a replica, but I mean, in the film, it's supposed to be, I believe, a Ferrari California.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
He ruined his sister's life.
It was a 250 GT California Spider. Not that I know cars, but that's.
It was a 4-wheel red.
Yeah,
car.
it was red.
Very expensive, shiny.
It was one of them red cars. I've always wanted a garage like that, and as an adult, that like pristine museum like quality with the glass all the way around.
I didn't like how it was hanging. It was like on stilts and like over the wood.
What about you, Josh? Got anything else you want to talk about, or?
I think we pretty much talked about everything I want to talk about. You crapped all over like a great film, so that's
I have one more that I want to do.
Yeah, I'd love to. Which one?
With the last one on my list.
I don't have your list.
Simply because it has also been chosen for preservation by the Library of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually watched it again a few days ago because it's been a while. Rewatching it reminds me just like how brilliant this movie was when it came out.
Mm-hmm. I watched it today, actually.
Yeah, I watched it like a month or so ago. Just my wife had never seen it, so.
And it's A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven wrote and directed this. This is one of the best horror movies of the 80s. Mm-hmm. Really kind of reevaluated that whole almost slasher genre. One of the main conceits of a lot of horror movies is isolation. You have to isolate the victims from society. And the great thing about this is where's the best place to isolate them? In their own minds. Freddy doesn't just stalk people and kills them. Like, he torments them in their dreams. It's a build-up for him. Whereas, Friday the 13th and Halloween and all that kind of stuff, they're murderers of opportunity.
Right.
As soon as the opportunity shows itself, they kill somebody with whatever's at hand. Freddy doesn't. Freddy plays with them. It's a cat and mouse game because he's torturing the kids because
he's getting back at the parents.
Yes, he's taking revenge on the kids for the sins of their parents. Yeah.
Here, Adam, is a fan theory I can get behind. Freddy was innocent, and that's why he was killing those kids because those parents
tortured him, and they were the bad guys.
Tortured him, killed him.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's just clickbait nonsense that they throw on a website.
You say it with no conviction, so I win.
Yeah.
But that's clearly not the case because the parents say he was totally guilty and he got off on a technicality or something.
Yeah, legal technicality.
But I guess if you'd murdered an innocent person, you would tell your kids that, oh no, he was guilty.
Yeah.
But that's a fan theory that I don't subscribe to. But I'm like, that would be interesting.
From the presentation of the film, that is a possibility. But there's a lot of stuff that didn't make it to the film in Wes Craven's original script. I mean, he was called a child molester, and then they changed it to just child murderer.
Yeah,
and the boiler room set, like there's a section, and it never made it onto the big screen, but where Freddy slept, like he slept in the boiler room, and so it was his little corner, and there were like naked dolls and stuff like that. So there was a lot of inference there, even if they didn't completely say it. But watching this movie, there's so many great subtle things that I like about it that a lot of other movies would just come out and say it outright.
Yeah,
but they don't. After the first murder, which by the way, the first woman who dies, Tina Gray, this same actress who dumped John Cusack in Better Off Dead. But
this is also this is the movie that launched Johnny Depp's career, which I.
Well, it's didn't launch his career, but it's his first on film.
Yeah.
21 Jump Street probably did actually launched it. Yeah. After the first girl is murdered, the main character Nancy is in the police station with her mother, and the police detective comes in. Then you find out that's her father. And there's clearly tension between the father and the mother. And then later on at the house, the father is never in the house. So clearly there's a separation going on, but they never explicitly state that.
Yeah. They leave out the exposition.
Yeah. And then, of course, they build up to the reveal that, the fight, at least, between mother and daughter, the fact that the mother has a drinking problem because they're, the next scene, the next morning, her mother's got like a bottle of vodka. Before the kid goes off to school. Mm-hmm. So morning drinking.
Is that
never a good sign?
Is that wait? Is that frowned upon?
Well,
yes, that's why we're recording this at 8 a.m. Because we've got to talk to you about the fact that you're downing an entire plastic gallon jug of tequila.
Freddy certainly fell down the path of becoming a caricature.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Wes Craven did do service to the character with A New Nightmare, which there was around the time of Scream and there's New Nightmare and In the Mouth of Madness all kind of have this meta-contextual element to them. A New Nightmare is a pretty frightening film. Basically, they're remaking, they're doing another Nightmare on Elm Street film. So all the people are playing themselves, and Freddy starts to manifest himself in the real world. So it's pretty good.
It adds all this mythology to it, like the fact that the concept of Freddy came from this old mythological demon that it is essentially trapped in stories to prevent it from.
It's one of the better of the kind of postmodern
metatextual.
Yeah,
I love this film so much, just the crazy stuff they did, because, like I said, he attacks them in their sleep while they're dreaming. There's this question of what's real and what isn't a lot of times in the film. There's this bit I love because it has to be in essentially every horror film and all that stuff. They take her to, or her mother takes her to a sleep clinic because they don't believe that she's being haunted by this creature that comes in her dreams. And
that's actually one of the better parts of the movie because it's the rational thing.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a parent and your kid's going through whatever. Take her to an expert. That's what you would do, right?
Exactly. It's let's actually get her some help.
Yeah.
But Charles Fleischer plays the doctor, and a lot of people may know Charles Fleischer. He was an actor and comedian and voiceover artist, best known for being the voice of Roger Rabbit. So that gave him fame for 8 months. Charles Fleischer is the doctor and everything, and then you of course have to have the speech that is completely crap. But he's, the mother said, "What's going on?" It's well, we don't know. We don't know everything about dreams. We don't know where they come from. I think you do. You're a doctor. They come from your own mind. So they're not being transported
It could be aliens. So we don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I'll wrap it up here. I'll say this: there were a handful of movies. I'm sure everyone listening to this is going to have their own favorites that we didn't mention.
I know we're just talking about an entire decade.
Yeah. There's a
and movies with teenagers in it. That was
there's a ton of them that were close to being talked about, and we just ran out of time. So maybe we'll do a part 2 of this sometime in the future. But in any case, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. If you'd like to tell us some of your favorite movies, we'd love to. 80s teen movies, we'd love to hear about it. The best way to do that would be to post it on our Facebook page or on Twitter and let us know what you think. You could also email us at brickedpit@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to leave us a voicemail, which we'd absolutely love, that's anchor.fm/brickedpit. Super easy to do that. And as far as movies go that we talked about that I hated, let the guys know how much you agree with me. That's really important. Until next time, this is the Brick Pit.
And we'll see you in your dreams.